1045 The Team and 1045theteam.com. On the line right now is New York Post's Marc Berman. The Knicks last night get the draft lottery. They get the 8th pick. Is this the worst case scenario for the Knicks?
Well, the worst case was 10, but that was a 0.03% chance of happening. So, but it's pretty bad. To go through such a miserable season and then come away with just the 8th pick is disappointing, especially when you look at the rankings of players. You know, even a Fox, if they were at the 6th hole, could have fallen to them, and I think Fox could be a franchise player. I don't know if there's a franchise player at 8. They do want a point guard or a shooting guard or a small forward. And at 8, you know, there's some guys there, but they come with question marks and risks.
You mentioned De'Aaron Fox possibly being out of the realm of possibilities for the Knicks at number 8. What players should they consider with the 8th pick?
Yeah, well, you know, the top international prospect is a French point guard, Frank Nicholina. Steve Mills, the GM, went to France 2 weeks ago, saw him, but he's a project. He comes off the bench in France, and he's got to adjust to the NBA style. The French league is definitely a different type of format. But it's someone who has a lot of potential in college, the North Carolina State point guard, Dennis Smith. He'll almost definitely be there at 8. North Carolina State was horrible this season, and Dennis Smith had an up-and-down year. You know, reading about his season, you know, he stopped talking to the media at some point. He's coming off an ACL tear from 2 years ago. I mean, he comes with question marks. Very, very athletic. And, you know, I've spoken to someone from the Knicks, and, you know, basketball IQ-wise, if you're going to come to the Knicks, you're going to have a very high one because they play this triangle. They still want to play the triangle. And Dennis Smith, he may not even fit in. But then there's even Justin Jackson from North Carolina, although people are thinking late lottery at best for him. He's been on a winning team, a great team, a championship team in North Carolina, plays small forward. Phil can fill the Carmelo Anthony void if he trades him with a high basketball IQ guy like Justin Jackson.
Now, you mentioned the triangle as well. Is there a possibility that the Knicks would draft a player specifically for the system before they go with best player available, which could be Dennis Smith?
That's the dilemma, and that's what Phil said. In his press conference a month ago, he said, you know, we're not just looking for the guy who can jump out of the gym, who could post a triple-double. We're looking for a smart player who knows how to play team basketball, makes others better. So he's admitted that. Dennis Smith didn't make anyone better at North Carolina State. Listen, he was only a freshman, and you know, maybe in a different era he obviously stays more than one season. But, yeah, that's why Justin Jackson is on the radar. They interviewed him in Chicago at the Combine. Maybe Phil has hinted also at trading down a little bit for a player like Justin Jackson who could still be available at 14 or 13 and getting an extra asset. So, but the bottom line is, going into last night, Lonzo Ball was still on their radar, and now he's no longer on their radar.
New York Post's Marc Berman joins us right now. Marc, if this is any other franchise, Phil Jackson likely would be fighting for his job at this point with what's been happening in recent years. Is this a draft where possibly Phil's job could be at risk maybe in the near future?
I think his job is at risk with everything he does at this point, even though he's got 2 guaranteed years left, and I believe he'll finish, you know, another season. But if there's no progress made next season, I just can't imagine Dolan not firing him. Obviously, Dolan is frustrated. Obviously, he's disappointed in how it's worked out with Phil Jackson. But he feels he gave him a 5-year contract, and he feels he deserves a little more time to turn it around. But after 4 seasons, if they're still miserable with, you know, if Porzingis is still upset, you know, Carmelo probably will be gone, or who knows, maybe he'll decide that I'm not going anywhere and enforces no trade clause, which could even make it even a worse situation. So I'm sure if things don't turn around in one more season, Dolan will say, okay, time to move on.
Now, what's your take on Melo this offseason? As you mentioned, there's the no trade clause. Does anything involving this draft pertain to Melo and possibly being traded anytime soon? Would this draft pick maybe be an asset in the deal?
Exactly. I think that's another reason why Phil was hoping this pick was better than it is. Listen, the Knicks need assets, but at number 8, if Phil feels he could package Melo and 8 and get a surefire starter and maybe a late first-round pick, maybe they do it. Again, Phil's not looking for the best available player either. He's very firm in his belief that we need a guard or a small forward. We're set at the 4 and 5. So later on in the draft, Phil thinks maybe he could pluck someone. He even cited Ron Baker last night. The guy wasn't even drafted. They signed him after the draft, and he, as Phil said, started at the end of the season, as did Willie Hernan Gomez, a second-round pick. So he's not so obsessed with get the best athlete available out there. He wants the full package. The basketball IQ is so big in his mind.
And Mark, I'll get you out on this one. Where do you see the future of Carmelo Anthony? I mean, he does have the no trade clause, but do you see him possibly staying this season, or perhaps moving to a team like the LA Clippers, as have been rumored now and time again?
Yeah. Well, listen. At the trade deadline, Carmelo was resigned to the fact that his days were over here. He figured they would strike some deal, and if it was with the Clippers, he would have approved it. If it was with Cleveland, he would have approved it. I'm even told Boston, he would have approved it. So those are 3 teams that he's willing to go. Now, things have changed, and we've written a lot about it in page 6 with Carmelo and his wife Lala. They're separated, possibility of a divorce, 10-year-old son Keon involved in the middle. Maybe he's so frazzled that the easiest thing for him to do is just to stay put here and weather the storm. But if it wasn't for this personal situation and he was just thinking 100% about his career, I think even Carmelo has hinted to us he knows his days are done as a New York Knick.
Marc Berman of the New York Post, thank you once again for your time and appreciate all the insight on the New York Knicks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matt. I appreciate you having me on.